You are listening to Curious Cat, the podcast that examines a shadowy space where science and the supernatural collide. I'm your host, Jennifer Holtz. Join me every week as I explore what it means to be a soul in a meat suit. Welcome to Curious Cat. This week, we're diving into kind of a spiritual no-go zone. Are we not supposed to talk about dark magic and light magic and all the judgy in-between magic? Well, I keep getting called to talk about hexes, jinxes, curses, and the really sticky part, the downside of them. Are there alternatives to hexing your ex? Let's get into it. Let's start with Hex 101. You know that's how I like to start things out. To define what a hex is, I found an amazing article by Spiral Rain, and I'm going to read a bit from it. The author says, a hex or a curse is an ancient practice intended to bring harm or misfortune upon someone. It may be done by a variety of methods, such as vocalizing the person's name and wishing ill will upon them, writing the cursed words on a piece of paper that is then buried in the earth, or emitting an energy intention with visualization to harm another person, just for a few examples. Despite its dark nature, it is still believed by many today to be a tool for taking justice into one's own hands if there's been a wrong done. While it is rarely seen as an acceptable way to respond to injustice in modern times, the idea of employing a sort of witchcraft in retaliation remains alive within many cultural mythologies throughout the world. And they do also offer types of hexes and curses. And I'd like to read a little bit of that in our Hex 101. There are many different types of curses and hexes that can be used in witchcraft, each with their own specific purpose and method of execution. Some examples include binding spells, and those spells are used to prevent someone from causing harm or engaging in negative behavior. Hex bags. These are small bags filled with herbs, crystals, and other items that are believed to possess specific powers. They can be used to protect against negative energy or to curse someone. Death curses. I'm not even going to read that part, okay? Because I don't want to be associated with it. Love curses. Well, if you've watched Harry Potter, you've seen love potions in action in the fiction world. But the author of this article says, these spells are used to force someone to fall in love with the person who casts the spell. Jinxing. This is a type of curse that's meant to bring bad luck to the intended target. It's important to note that curses and hexes go against the Wiccan rede and most tradition of witchcraft, which should not be used lightly. Many practitioners choose to focus on positive energy and spell work rather than negative. I also found an amazing article that talks about the rule of three. Okay, so in the Spiral Rain article, they hinted at the edges, let's put it that way, about how it kind of goes against Wiccan rede to employ negative magic against somebody. And that you hear at the end of spells when you say harm to none. There's a price that we pay when we attach our energy to someone else. And that's what a hex is. And you're using your magic or your intention, your energy, another word for going after that person or causing them bad luck or something negative to befall. Often, here's the irony, and I'm going to go ahead and say it, is that's a person you actually want to distance yourself from. You may be mad at them. You may be upset, rightfully so, but that isn't a person you want to vibrate the same with. We need to think about that. Attaching energy to someone or something you despise comes at a price. The thing that comes to mind when I talk about this is, remember when the witches hexed Trump in his first year as being a president? I remember hearing about it on all the mainstream media, and I cringed at it because I knew no matter what their intentions were, maybe they were, worried about where the country was going to go and the misogyny and you name it that was maybe going to befall our country in the next 4 years. They were choosing to take their energy and attach it to someone that they despise. And that is not positive. And if you keep those tethers there, those are the kind of things that grow magical tumors, for lack of a better term for it. And you need to willfully understand that that is the price. You may pay it in your body. You may pay it in your own life with having kind of residual, negative, sticky, dark energy attached to you that is part of that curse. Have you ever heard the saying, where your attention goes, your energy flows? To me, that's the price that's paid if you choose to hex someone. You're choosing to give your attention to that person, that thing, that entity that you disagree with or that wronged you. And that hex, think of it as a thick rope that ties you to the thing that you despise. The Mental Fitness Company has a fantastic article about catching the energy of someone else, both positive and negative. I'd like to share some highlights. The author of the article begins with, have you ever noticed how someone else's energy can impact your day, make it better, or totally destroy it? You've probably experienced the effect of energy many times in your life without really putting two and two together. Certain people radiate positive energy and others negative energy. These vibes become infectious. Remember when you were feeling a little down and you spent time with an upbeat person and then felt more energized and upbeat yourself? Or you were feeling upbeat and were completely flattened by a negative energy person. A person's energy is a combination of their past, their mindset, their dominant thoughts, and their perception of the world. Sometimes that energy is easily felt, and other times it manifests subtly and subconsciously. Positive, energized people often make you feel safe, happy, and relaxed around them. Their vibe is welcoming. You meet someone for the first time and you feel like you're being recharged and uplifted just by being near them. You enjoy the time you spend with them and look forward to your next meeting. Yes, please. Whereas negative people are often judgmental, unhappy complainers, and they like to put others down or gossip. You intuitively feel insecure, unhappy, and tense around them. Their vibe is off-putting. No, thank you, the author says. Of course, there is an infinite number of variations in between. You may not consciously know it, but your senses pick up on those vibrations and read them. Why is it that meeting with some people can uplift and inspire while others leave you wanting to hide in a dark room? Sometimes it's easy to see how others affect you, but many times you may not even realize the effect others are having on you or the effect you're having on other people. Building self-awareness of how situations or people make you feel can help correct or deflect this negative energy. The more you notice other people's energy, the more conscious you become of who you want to spend time with. Energy vampires or suckers are good to avoid. We'll talk more about energetic vampires later in the episode because I think it's worth repeating. The author goes on to say, remember, we all feel negative at times, and that's okay. It's how long you choose to stay there that matters. And sometimes it's important for you to find someone to hang out who can help you bring your energy up, just as it is necessary and empathetic to help lift the energy of others who are accessible and open to it. The more positive you feel, the more you realize how important it is to stay positive and not let anyone affect your energy, because energy is an important part of your life. It gives you strength, meaning, creativity, motivation, focus, and if you make it a priority, it will serve you well. They also mention that if you are a leader or somebody in management of a company, you need to be clued into the environment that you're creating with your employees. They say to evaluate the energy flowing within your company and around you as you do in your home life. Don't wait for others to create the positive, rewarding, motivating environment that you have the power to create. A positive environment is a healthy environment, whether it be at home or the office. When you pick up on the vibes within and around you, you have choices to make. You can join in the energy level and add to that energy or vibration, or you can choose to change the vibration, or you can simply walk away. I love that so much. She reminds her clients to be responsible with their energy because it has immense power. Reflect on your energy and be conscious of how it ripples out into the world and into the lives of others. And at all times, remember to breathe deep and long. I love that. And I love the way that she concluded that beautiful article. It was really well written. If we don't set our spiritual boundaries, then we walk around like SpongeBob, human sponges that are impacted by the energies of others, whether it's the people or the places that we go or both. It's time we face the truth. We're grown-ups, right? Hexing someone attaches our energy to someone we don't like. And that's simply how a hex works. Our energy is sent to basically stick to that other person and impact their daily life. We have a finite amount of energy, so we need to own up to the toll it takes to spread it around. I wanted to know and understand magical ethics, and I turned to Learn Religion for that because they're a great source of information. And I'd like to read from their amazing article about negative magic and the ethics behind it. Their article is titled, Negative Magic, Is Cursing or Hexing Acceptable? The reader asked the author of the article, Patty Wigington, I'm new to studying about paganism, and I'm looking at a lot of different forms of witchcraft. One thing I don't understand is that some people say it's never okay to hex or curse anyone, but a lot of times I read about curses and hexes in folklore and historical accounts. What if someone's hurting me? Can I protect myself? Am I allowed to curse them? I don't know how this works. Help. She mentions in the article the rule of three. Much like everything else in modern witchcraft, she writes, and paganism, it's really going to depend on who you ask. For starters, there's the rule of three, or the threefold law, which is typically explained to mean that no matter what you do magically, there's a giant cosmic force that will make sure your deeds are revisited upon you threefold. It's universally guaranteed, some pagans claim, which is why you better not ever perform any harmful magic, or at least that's what they tell you. However, one could argue that rule of three only applies to members of traditions who follow it. In other words, you wouldn't expect a non-Christian to follow the 10 Commandments. So it's unreasonable to ask non-adherents to the rule of three to follow that particular guideline. There are many pagan traditions which consider the rule of three to be a ridiculous and illogical tenet. Furthermore, if you look at magic in a historical context, such as the various traditions of folk magic, there are many documented examples of people performing negative or baneful magic. When it comes to cursing or hexings, only you can decide whether or not it's acceptable for you to do so. There are a lot of people out there in the magical community who have performed hexes and curses, some of them on an absolutely spectacular level, with what the author says, no karmic backlash. And I have to note, how do they even confirm that? Be sure, they say, to read up on magical ethics for some examples of how positive and negative magic sometimes overlap. So she goes into questions to ask yourself. Typically, a curse, which results in expected and unwanted consequences, is one that was performed badly. There are a number of things that can go wrong in cursing and hexing, just like other workings. Did you allow emotion to get in the way of the working? Did you word things in a way that allowed your plans to go awry? Did you spend too much time dwelling on the hoped for results and worrying about what would happen? Did you, while casting, question whether or not the working would be effective or not? Also keep in mind that there are some pagan traditions that believe that any sort of magic for personal gain is wrong, whether it's harmful to another person or not, she points out. Again, cursing and hexing isn't for everyone. There are some paths that forbid it under any circumstances, and some which believe it's acceptable in certain cases. It's a complicated answer, isn't it? She says also finally at the close, if you feel uncomfortable with harmful magic, then by all means do not do it. On the other hand, if you're part of a tradition that allows it and you feel a need to perform it, then be sure to do so wisely and with all the forethought you would use in any other kind of working. I found another article because I really think we need to talk about this straight on this week. The article is titled, Why I Never Hex or Curse Anyone. It comes from Medium. The author writes, there's an unspoken rule regarding hexing and cursing among witches. Hexing and cursing are also very tricky and must be done under such specific circumstances that even if you do everything right, one missed detail and it might backfire, and then you wind up hexing or cursing yourself. The rule is don't hex or curse anyone who has not personally, directly, and intentionally harmed you. So people who have done things to hurt you purposely towards you and specifically to you. This means if they hurt you accidentally, don't hex or curse them. They troll you online, don't hex or curse them. The person you had a disagreement with, nope. That politician who keeps implementing laws that might harm people, sorry, no. That person who threatened to hex and curse you, no. Someone who bullied you, you could. An abuser, definitely. Someone who keeps doing things on purpose to sabotage you or defame you, also yes. Things can get tricky when you enter the nitty-gritty of it all, she continues. You must be specific in your hex or curse. You must ensure this hex or curse will not harm anyone else in the process. Friendly fire is not acceptable. I never hex or curse, she writes. It goes against my core values as a human being and against my personal beliefs and values and the rules I follow as a witch. The main rule most witches follow is whatever you do, do no harm to anyone else. Hence, hexing or cursing someone, even with good reason, is me intentionally harming someone else. So I just don't do it. While we're on the subject of when it's okay to hex or when it's not, I found a funny article from Spiral Nature magazine, and it was Hex the Ex, reflecting back negativity and breaking control. Do you have a burning need for revenge? She writes, want to out some nasty piece of work liar? Need to neutralize sources of negativity, trauma, oppression, or abuse? Perhaps it's time for some divine retribution. 6 years free from a malignant narcissist, I found magical ways to hex my ex and aid my healing. No, it's not black magic or the dark arts. I believe in the law of three, and I don't want it to bring anything bad back to me, but I've learned to give dirt back to dirtbags and send negativity back to its source, and I want to share some of my favorite methods with you. She writes an extra special note. If you face domestic abuse or violence, do not rely on magic. Contact the police, a hotline, a crisis center, or understanding friends and family. You deserve protection and support. The word hex, she says, comes from the German hexen, meaning witch, and the Pennsylvanian German hexe, meaning to practice witchcraft. A hex is an evil spell wishing bad luck and bad things on someone or something. Curse comes from the Old English C-U-R-S, curse, or cors, meaning the evil which has been invoked upon one, that which causes severe trouble. And vex, V-E-X, comes from the Old French vexer, meaning harass, and the Latin vexare, meaning to shake, jolt, or toss violently. Hexes differ greatly from binding or banishing spells. A binding spell literally binds a person or an object to another person or object. It can be done in a positive or negative manner, such as a hand-fast binding two loved beings together. Commonly, a binding spell is used to tie someone to something, someone, or somewhere, or to prevent them from harming themselves or another. I'm not a big fan of binding or banishing spells, she says, because they interfere with the free will of others. And in my magical practice, there's no room for control or manipulation, but there is room for self-defense and empowerment. Harm none. Both the Wiccan Rede and the laws of nature guide my magical practice. Magic is a helping and healing tool. The Wiccan Rede guides me to harm none, and that includes making sure no harm comes to me. By learning to remove myself from the receptive role of absorbing negativity, I have actively become the Vex that shakes my abusive ex up, bouncing his crap right back. Simple physics and the law of nature shows that a negative charge repels negativity. So instead of always being nice and positive and absorbing negativity, I have learned to send negativity and abusive energy back to its source. Negative and abusive people. I choose not to fawn in the face of aggression, not smile to put abusers at ease, and not stay silent in the presence of injustice. My magic is learning to speak truth to power and hold my own protective center. God, you can feel the power behind her words. It's inspiring, actually. It reminds me to keep your spiritual, shell on. I'm a positive person, and I think that sometimes being positive can be the best way to dissuade negativity. It keeps it from sticking to me because people that have a negative mindset are kind of repulsed by me, to be honest. But going further with the article, she says, Hexing the Ex, I use hexes, curses, vexes, and worse to counteract negativity when I've been crossed, hexed, or abused. What goes around comes around, she says. So when negativity is used against me, I call in the power of hexes to help right the situation. I do not invite negativity in or allow it to corrupt me, but use the laws of nature and physics to repel it. I hold no negative intent, but have learned to deflect the negative intent of abusive or negative people. It's their own energy that I turn around and send back to them, hoping it bites them. I let it be known that I am a hexen, a witch, that I use hexing or witchcraft regularly, and I'm not afraid to shake it up. Kind of sounds like Tay-Tay, right? Below are her 3 most reliable hexes. Speaking truth to power. She says it's a modern practice based on the old technique of using words of power. An ancient earth magic practice, it can repel negativity, abuse, or magical attack. It effectively bounces energy back to the sender. By repeating the words which empower and uplift, we raise our own magical energy for protection and defense, driving away the negativity. We each have personal words of power, and each situation calls for different power words. Her most powerful words are simple, quote, I'm happy, I'm safe, I'm healthy, I'm peaceful, I'm well in every cell, I'm loved, I'm divinely protected and perfectly safe. She says, inhale as you say I'm, exhale as you name each magical quality. Use the practice to slow the breath and heart rate. Become conscious of generating energy. Draw it up from the root chakra through the body and shower it out the crown chakra, feeling it cascading down around you. It's a protective shell, right? Repeat this breathing pattern and visualization to effectively create a protective energetic veil. When you feel safe and secure, hex from behind the veil, and this is what she offers. My good energy surrounds me. Your negativity surrounds thee. Energy returns to where it began. May you be hexed by your own hand. Whew. I don't even like saying that, but I can see the logic in it, right? The second way that she recommends is burn, baby, burn. It's a version of candle work to repel negativity. You need a black candle, a picture of your ex, a sharp tool to carve the candle, and matches. She recommends you carve the name of the target on the candle and place it in a fire-safe candle holder. Wrap the picture around the candle, secured with a black thread. Light the candle and say, I invoke the fire of purification to work with me tonight. Burn away negativity and set the balance right. Okay, so she says, let it burn completely, knowing as the fire consumes your ex's name and image, it consumes their power over you. I actually like that because she goes on to say, feel the shackles of the trauma bond being dissolved. Be free. So basically, you're cutting yourself free from them. She goes on to say, after burning away negativity, carry a small piece of rose quartz tucked in your shirt or bra and let go of residual fear, anger, or pain as it arises. The rose quartz lovingly absorbs it and releases it to the mother goddess. It's in her hands now. Let go. I love that. I don't really vibe with the third method, so I'm not going to read it, but I do have a link to her article in the show notes if you want to check it out. But when she says in conclusion that she's a hexen, she owns it. But what she's doing most often is repelling the negativity. She's sending it back to source. And I like that idea of sending it back to source. When I create a positive shell around me, then that's what it's doing, but it's doing it in real time, right? And this is stuff. This is like energy, goodwill bags that she's basically returning to source that she's collected throughout years of a relationship. If you think you're hexed, if you've ever suspected yourself of being hexed, here are 5 ways to remove that hex. I found another article to share with you, and the author gives us 5 ways to basically unhex yourself. Let's dive into it after a super quick break.
Ever wanted to astral project?
Speak to a loved one who's passed?
Heal people with just the touch of your hand?
Well, you won't learn how to do that on this podcast, but you will hear from those that can.
The Skeptic Metaphysicians podcast is not your typical dry and boring metaphysics show. It's a fun exploration of metaphysics, spiritual awakening tools, modalities, and personalities that's as entertaining as it is informational.
Join hundreds of like-minded souls who are growing and expanding their consciousness at skepticmetaphysician.com.
Discover the Skeptic Metaphysicians,
your new metaphysical obsession.
This article comes from Original Botanica, and they say it's the 5 best ways to uncross yourself and remove a hex. They recommend you take a ritual bath. A ritual bath is not just about physical cleanliness. It dives deeper into the realms of spiritual purification. It stands as a potent tool to cleanse negative energy and malicious magic that might have found its way to you. The basics of a ritual bath or shower ensure that your body is physically clean. This pre-cleansing phase prepares your body and spirit for the powerful uncrossing that follows. Next, select hex-removing ingredients. So once you're clean, fill your bathtub with water. Add a specially formulated hex-removing bath product. Some popular choices are conditioned bath salt, jinx-removing bath salt, or uncrossing herb bath. These products are often infused with powerful herbs and minerals known for the uncrossing properties. Visualize the cleansing process. So immerse yourself in the bath. As you sit in the water, close your eyes and visualize the negative energy and effects of the curse being pulled from your body, absorbed by the water and neutralized. This mental image reinforces the spiritual cleansing process. Finishing the ritual. Once you feel spiritually cleansed, carefully step out of the bath. Instead of reaching for a towel, let your body air dry, allowing the remnants of the bath salts or herbs to linger and continue their protective work on your skin. To conclude, take a small amount of the bath water and throw it over your left shoulder, aiming it toward the rising sun, a symbolic gesture of sending away the negative energies and greeting new positive beginnings. And I have to say, I've also heard that you can watch it going down the drain and it literally draining out of your aura and out of your life forever. And I like that too, in case the rising sun isn't happening when you're getting out of your bath. She says, create your personalized hex removing bath. If you prefer a personal touch, you can craft your own hex breaking bath solution. A simple recipe involves combining sea salt, rosemary, and other herbs known for their hex breaking powers. For persistent curses, remember, not all negative energies or curses are created equal. Some might be more persistent and stubborn, requiring more than one ritual bath to break. In such cases, it's common to repeat the bath for 3, 7, or even 13 days consecutively. This extended ritual helps ensure that even the most stubborn curses are fully removed. She reminds us that if you don't have a bathtub, do not fret. You can use your shower for cleansing rituals as well. The ritual can be adapted. Simply mix your chosen bath salts or uncrossing herbs with water and use this solution to wash your body, following the similar visualization and concluding techniques. In the realm of spiritual practices, consistency, intent, and belief play crucial roles. As you embark on this cleansing journey, approach it with an open heart and unwavering faith in the process. The universe has a unique way of responding to earnestness. So, all of this conversation about hexing makes me wonder how much of myself, bits and pieces, are spewed out in the world because I cursed someone. I mean, accidentally, not in a big ritual way. So if you're like me and have been in the accidental recipient of a road rager or ended up fuming at someone for doing harm to someone or something you love, then maybe this question I'm going to ask applies to you too. But even if I'm alone in this, I have to speak the truth. Here it goes. This hex talk got me thinking. Recently, we brought our dog into a veterinary clinic to have his ear looked at. He was a bit sensitive to have it touched, and we worried it was infected. Because we're in Colorado right now, we went to a new vet. They took him out of eyesight, and when they returned him 40 minutes later to us, he was howling in pain, shaking his head incessantly, and the vet sat in the middle of the room unaffected. I sat on the floor with Cooper and comforted him, confused why there was no empathy from the vet. She was hyper-focused on selling us on a lot of expensive stuff that wasn't related to his ear at all. When we asked about his obsessive head shaking, she said that's the ear infection. And as we explained that this was new as of this office visit, she left the room. I was fuming, but I focused on Cooper. After the visit, I said and thought mean things about the vet, to be completely candid. And now that I'm doing this episode on hexes, I'm realizing, justified or not, wasn't I giving her my energy and wishing her ill will? Isn't that like a hex? When I've been cut off in traffic and I glare and shake a fist, isn't that a sort of curse or hex I'm sending to the other driver? How much energy, bits of me are floating out there, spewed in a moment of upset and never reconciled, retrieved and brought back to me. I meditate daily, and my favorite, Steve Noble, his meditations often focus on bringing the bits of our soul, our light, back to us. But his underlying assumption is that those bits were given in love or compassion. It makes me feel so bad. I need to do a meditation where I apologize for my negative thoughts or curses, accidental curses, or hexes, and then ask that my negative energy absorbs back into Mother Earth and the bit of my soul, those soul slivers, return to me when the hex stuff has been fairly mitigated and all parties are made whole. The best I could do is a meditation in a book I'm reading, and it comes darn close, from the author Don Jose Ruiz and his book titled The Shaman's Path to Freedom, a Toltec wisdom book. He offers the following. Feel free to try it as I read, but not if you're driving a car or truck, riding a bike, or walking, basically doing anything but sitting in a safe place. So here it is. Oh, and first he gives us some background. He calls the process of removing the emotional charge of negative experiences recapitulation. He likens it to a string of Christmas lights, and when they're plugged in, he writes, they light up and may even feel warm to the touch, but when unplugged, they become cold and inert. Neutral. Likewise, he writes, quote, when you unplug your negative experiences from their emotional charge, they become neutral and can no longer hurt or distract you, end quote. He writes, recapitulation uses the power of breath to cleanse the negative emotions from your traumatic memory. When you inhale, you draw back all the energy you've invested in this memory. When you exhale, you expel all the negativity you've taken in because of the event. Here is the process. And again, only try this as I read it if you're seated or lying down in a safe place. Number 1. Sit or lie down in a comfortable place where you won't be disturbed for several minutes. 2. Reflect on the traumatic event, or in the case of this podcast episode, the wrong you might have done to someone, or the hex or curse you put on someone or something. Focus on the feelings you had during the experience. 3. Inhale deeply, calling back all the negative emotions you experienced during the event. Emotions are just energy. By taking this energy back, you can cleanse it of its negative charge and put it to better use somewhere else. 4. As your breath enters your lungs, imagine this trapped energy returning to your body. This energy belongs to you, and you get to decide what to do with it. 5. Still thinking about the traumatic event, begin to exhale. As you do so, imagine yourself expelling the negative emotions you feel toward the memory. Push out all the shame, anger, guilt, or sadness tied up with it. These emotions cannot hurt you any longer. They are not yours anymore. 6. Reflect on the memory as you inhale and exhale. Imagine the energy that was trapped inside being released, cleansed, and restored to you for higher purposes. Finally, breathe in and out until you feel that the negative energy has been eliminated, decontaminated, neutralized, and returned to you in a pure and useful form. He also notes, quote, don't worry if you cannot fully neutralize the traumatic memory or hexing in one session. It can take several sessions to clear an event completely. Every time you use the practice, you will find that event feels a bit less charged, less sticky. Over time, it will diminish entirely. You will know when your energy has been fully reclaimed because you'll be able to think of the event or person, even talk about the experience without feeling any negative charge coming up as you do so. One final note from me. It sure seems like a longer process to undo a curse or hex than to put it into place. You have free will, and so I'm not telling you what to do or not to do, but I'm just making an observation. It reminds me of getting rid of a tattoo. It takes longer and more sessions than getting the original ink. Just food for thought. So let's dive into some alternatives to cursing, hexing, and jinxing. If you are rightfully upset with someone, before you curse or hex or energize negativity, Don Jose Ruiz offers an alternative viewpoint in the form of a Buddhist story that I just had to share. He says, quote, one day the Buddha was sitting with his disciples when an angry man came right up to him and spat in his face. Buddha's disciples were horrified by this behavior, but the Buddha himself just cocked his head and asked the man, what else? The next day, the same man came back, but this time instead of spitting in the Buddha's face, he bowed down and humbly begged his forgiveness. How can I forgive you? The Buddha asked. The man who spat on me yesterday isn't here today, and the person who got spat on isn't here either. Nobody has been insulted, and there is nobody to forgive. Ruiz adds, this story shows that when you are living in complete awareness, there is no need to forgive others because you cannot be harmed in the first place. There is no constant and identifiable self to be insulted or offended, and no constant and identifiable other who can do the offending. The Buddha knows that the angry man is not spitting on him. He's spitting on the idea, which may or may not have anything to do with the real Buddha. In other words, the Buddha refuses to take it personally. The story also illustrates that the man's anger is a temporary state, one that will pass. Buddha knows there's nothing to gain by rubbing the man's face in his bad behavior. What happened is in the past. Now the only way forward is to go forward. And here's where it really hits home in our Hex conversation. He writes, quote, how many times have you clung to your anger against someone only to run into that person months or years later and realize that the person who you've been angry at isn't even there anymore, end quote. And I'm going to add, and in a moment of hurt or rage, and this isn't life instruction, just a thought experiment. How about you sit with that emotion, really feel into it in all its uncomfortable intensity, and then once the wave passes, picture running into that person 10 years down the road. How do you look in the visualization? How do you feel? And how are they? Do you even care anymore? It takes so damn much energy to carry visceral emotions like jealousy, rage, hurt around. In order to do so, you have to make it like a daily meditation to recall in the cells of your body what that hurt felt like on day one. Basically, you have to actively re-traumatize yourself, keeping that constant low boil of anger. It's exhausting. Back to Ruiz's story, though. He writes, quote, when you forgive others, you not only free up the energy that was going into hating or fearing them, but you also come into your true nature, which is limitless, unbounded, and in some ways invincible. You realize that although other people's actions may hurt you in the moment, they can only cause you lasting harm to the degree you take them personally, end quote. Wow. What he's saying is forgiving is a valid alternative to hexing. I promised you at the top we would revisit the concept of psychic vampires. Have you heard of psychic vampires? Back in college, I went with one of my best friends, LT, to his office Christmas party. It was on campus and it promised us free food and drink. We were poor students, so we jumped at the chance to dress up and go. There in the midst of the staff party sat a psychic doing free readings. I was dating someone at the time I thought was my forever guy, and LT encouraged me to have a reading done with the psychic. She said I needed to beware of psychic vampires, particularly in my close relationships. I'd never heard the term, so she explained. These are people that suck the positive energy from others without asking permission, leaving the other feeling drained. The other being me. Part of me wondered if LT had slid her a $20 bill to say that to me, plant a seed of doubt about my boyfriend, but it didn't matter really. He wasn't a psychic vampire, but the reading made me aware that some people did take all my energy. It was the first time, in fact, that I was aware that my personal energy was a finite resource to be protected. It relates to today's discussion because if you haven't heard of a psychic vampire, I want you to know now. Psych Central has a great article on the topic, and here are a couple highlights. Titled, How to Avoid Being Drained by Energy Vampires, Hope Gillette writes, you may not know someone is an energy vampire when you first meet them, but you can tell whether you've been around an energy vampire if they consistently make you feel overstimulated, annoyed, apathetic, fatigued, stressed. Initially, they may come across as extremely friendly, almost overly so. It can feel natural to want to bring them under your wing, especially if they come right out with a down on their luck story. This is a common approach for an energy vampire. Jasmine Cobb, LCSW, a trauma therapist from Tyler, Texas, explains energy vampires are often codependent personalities. This means they gravitate toward others for need fulfillment and find it challenging to be self-sufficient. An energy vampire is someone who repeatedly takes and lacks insight and awareness of how this contributes to interpersonal problems, she says. Nancy Irwin, a licensed clinical psychologist from Los Angeles, says common signs of an energy vampire include talking more about themselves than about you or anyone else, having ongoing drama in their lives, having a victim mentality, pessimism, jealousy, demanding a lot of attention, neediness. Tina B. Tessina, a PhD and a licensed psychotherapist from Long Beach, California, adds that other behaviors of an energy vampire include wanting you to always be available on their terms, expecting you to take responsibility for them, using guilt to get you to do what they want. In a group setting, when an energy vampire enters a group dynamic, you may notice everyone goes quiet. Humor is squashed by seriousness. You may feel like they kill the vibe. Other signs of an energy vampire in a group setting include people walk away from group conversation that includes them. They ask uncomfortably personal questions in front of everyone. The conversation shifts towards their life. They reject anyone's solutions to their problems. They talk over other people. They insert themselves into conversations. They ignore social cues and boundaries. They latch onto one person in the group. They diminish the problems of others. When an energy vampire is present, you may notice that everyone's temper grows short and even your mild-mannered friends become irritable and sarcastic. The article also dives into looking at empaths versus energy vampires. If you're an empath, someone who is exceptionally sensitive to the emotions of others, you may be susceptible to energy vampires. That's probably what that psychic was telling me years ago, right? Quote, your natural desire to help people in pain can make you susceptible. You have to learn to tell the difference between people who will accept your help and use it to heal and people who just absorb it and don't benefit from it, cautions Tessina. Your personal mental health may also make you more prone to energy drain. Mental health states like depression, grief, anxiety may make you emotionally vulnerable and can prevent you from keeping firm boundaries to protect your emotional energy. Without firm boundaries in place, you become more vulnerable to bending in a way that will be more favorable to the energy vampire, says Cobb. So how do you stop someone from draining your energy? Encountering energy vampires does not have to leave you feeling like you need a recovery nap. Here are some tips for protecting your energy. Assertive communication. Cobb recommends communicating assertively and directly. For example, saying, let's go back to my point about this topic so it doesn't get missed. It's a respectful way to prevent an energy vampire from stealing the conversation. You may have to ask for space if you cannot avoid the person. Irwin recommends being kind but clear and suggests saying something like, you have a huge personality or energy that just frankly sometimes overwhelms me. I don't want to offend you, but I just need some space. I can't keep up with you. How about learning to say no? It can be challenging to say no, especially if you're a people pleaser. Ouch. No is a boundary, however, and energy vampires need boundaries to be maintained or they'll walk all over them. If you're uncomfortable going out to lunch with someone, it's okay to say no. They may attempt to guilt you, but that could be a great reminder of why you're saying no in the first place. I thought that was fantastic advice for all of us. Whether you identify with being empathetic or not, it's just a great reminder to be conscious of the choices that we're making. Before I close, though, I wanted to share one last feel-good story that reminds me to assume the best, not the worst in people. From Don Jose Ruiz's book, The Shaman's Path to Freedom, he reminds us to perceive divinity everywhere. Ruiz writes, quote, When a woman I know went on a camping trip, she was annoyed to discover that some nearby campers were noisy partiers. She had gone to the forest for peace and quiet, but all she could hear was their beer bottles clinking and the sound of their noisy laughter as they tuned their guitars. As she lay in her tent trying to read, feeling more and more irritated by her thoughtless neighbors, she entered a truly miserable state. Then a few minutes later, one of the noisy group showed up outside her tent, invited her to join them for a campfire. It turned out that one of the people in the group had terminal cancer. All of his old friends had gotten together to take him on one last camping trip. The behavior that my friend had perceived as thoughtless and boorish was actually a deeply meaningful ritual for those involved. As she sat by the campfire, enjoying the music and the deep currents of love running between the old friends, she perceived the divinity in the people she had written off as losers just minutes before. She began to see the best in them instead of the worst, and her personal hell transformed into heaven. This touching true story reminds me to be mindful at all times and bring the best of myself to my perception of others. Thanks for listening to Curious Cat. Thanks for journeying with me as I explore what this thing called life is. Stay curious. I love you.
Hey, you. Yes, you. Are you looking for a new podcast that appeals to your scientific curiosity, but is also a little bit spooky?
Show me how I died in a past life.
Well, look no further, because this cat is where it's at.
He had concerns about the ethics surrounding AI, feeling they had achieved consciousness.
Curious Cat Podcast examines the shadowy space where science and the supernatural collide. Listen every week with your host, Jennifer Holtz, as she and her guests explore what it means to be a soul in a meat suit.
We were healing karma together. They were all kind of predestined to resolve something.
Listen on all your favorite streaming apps and continue the conversation on Twitter at CuriousCatPodCA, or find Jennifer and all her links at Jennifer L. Holtz, spelled HOTES.com.